This surprisingly sunny winter Saturday morning. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce to you Dr. Travis Heggie, who is a professor of tourism in the School of Applied and Human Development. And he said he'll fill you in on anything else in his talk.
Okay. Like, you're already clapping, that means I could just wrap up and go home now, so, I've heard you're a rowdy group, is that true? No, okay, I'm looking, so, you know Deborah back here, she's my director at the university, and I know she's really nervous today because she doesn't know what I'm going to say. And, I already know that. I was actually thinking maybe I should wear some bib overalls today or something different, just to surprise you, but I didn't, so, anyhow, my name's Travis. You can call me Travis. This is my 12th or 13th year here at Bowling Green State University. I'm educated at the University of Hawaii at Hilo on the Big Island of Hawaii, which I was out there on a full scholarship, and that was just the worst years of my life, I'll tell you that. So, but it was great. Then I did my master's and my doctorate work at Texas A&M University. So we play Alabama at noon today in basketball, and we're going to lose. So, but I went to Texas A&M because I couldn't get into Texas Women's University or college, and like Deborah went to. But actually, I'd never heard of it at that time. But they gave my wife and I at the time pretty good funding, and I will tell you, I am blessed that I essentially had an education paid for through my academics. So where do we start? What are you guys scared of? We're here talking about pandemics, epidemics, people getting sick. Okay, this is something I specialize in. Okay, I will tell you. Go ahead.
Ebola.
Ebola should scare you. Okay, I personally don't want to ever go back into the Congo just because of the soup mix of issues that are in the Congo. Okay, I met pygmies in the Congo. Remember the pygmy people we used to talk about in the 80s? Yeah. They're you don't even know they're there, and then they come out of the forest and they're right 10 feet away from you. So, but yeah, Ebola is something we should be afraid of. It just scares me because I don't want to bleed out of my eyes like that. But yes,
I'm afraid of misinformation.
I'm so happy to hear you say that. Yeah, because there definitely is a lot of misinformation. Yeah, definitely. Okay, let me tell you my so-called credentials, okay, and what I do. My specialty here is what we call emporiatrics, which really works with the health and safety issues of travelers. I'm extended a lot more beyond that. I specialize in what we call wilderness and travel medicine, definitely moving into aviation medicine, inside commercial aviation, inside the cabins and whatnot of airplanes. This is something that I've been doing for a very long time. And what I'm going to do, since you told me what you're scared of, I'm going to circle back to this towards the end of my presentation. I want to tell you a little bit about my background, my personal life, my research life, just so you have an idea of who I am and where I came from and what my thoughts are on certain aspects, okay? Some of the stuff could scare you, please don't be scared, okay? You mentioned Ebola. Are we really nervous about another SARS epidemic? SARS-CoV, we'll call it COVID, okay? I was very much alive in the first SARS episode in 2003. I hail from Western Canada, from Alberta, and my first few years were down in southern Utah. But I still remember when the 2003 epidemic, or we won't call it an epidemic, when the 2003 episode happened with the first SARS strain that came out of China. You might say, well, what does a professor in tourism, hospitality, event management have to do with this? I will tell you, okay? Where did the first strain start at in 2003? Okay, we know it came out of somewhere in the Chinese territories, but it was first recognized in a hotel in Hong Kong. Okay, how did it get to Canada from there? Okay, Canada was hit hard, Toronto was hit hard with it via an airplane. Okay, this is where I tie in this or these type of different vectors. Okay, I've actually gone to stay at that hotel in Hong Kong before, and I didn't get sick, thank heavens, but I just wanted to go to what we consider kind of the ground zero, even though it's not really a ground zero per se, but went to visit it. But this is how I link into things, because whether we realize that the travel, the tourism, the movement of people, really contribute to a lot of our issues. Now, I'm gonna tell you straightforward, okay? How do I say who I am really? I'm not just a professor. I am a professor and a research scientist. I am a fellow of the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Glasgow. Okay, I have been through since 2017. I was the first non-MD to be made a fellow with that group. Okay, we are the group that we started off doing a lot of advising to the British government, to the UK government. But as soon as SARS, COVID started happening, we've been doing a whole lot of other work. Okay, I'm also the founding chair for the Expedition of Wilderness Medicine Specialty Group with the International Society of Travel Medicine. Well, here, let me just jump into here. So, let me go here, okay? These are, so everybody's got to give you your credentials, so you actually kind of believe that they might know what they're talking about. So, this is my credentials with the Royal Society. I was proud of this, you guys. I'm just a kid from a ranch in Western Canada, and I made it off in the big world with my colleagues. But I also hold adjunct positions, okay? I'm a senior research professor with James Cook University with their School of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene. These are my malaria guys, okay? People don't realize that the top third of Australia is definitely tropical. Throw in Port Moresby and Papua New Guinea and you have malaria issues all over the place. And I'm also hold a similar position with the RWTH Aachen University over in Germany. The three groups, myself, my Australian colleagues and my German colleagues form a pretty good team of consultants around the world where we are getting called, and we're getting called more and more, sometimes from hotels, sometimes from cruise ships, okay, sometimes from other entities that I can't disclose because I signed non-disclosure agreements. But when something is happening, they'll call us in and ask us, okay? We've been dealing with SARS strain since 2008, really, okay? You know, a viral strain like that will change and morph all the time. So putting the genetics into some of this stuff is just something we've worried about doing. But if there's a problem on a cruise ship, we know the norovirus is quite common on cruise ships. We seem to be about the only team out there in the world that can actually solve those problems. And I won't give you the secrets to what we do, but it's a whole lot of bleach. Okay, but I let a German lab make it out for us. We've been working together in Africa for 14 years now. We started off working on high altitude pulmonary and cerebral edema issues up on Mount Kilimanjaro, basically altitude sickness, where you have 70,000 tourists a year trying to climb that mountain, okay, and only 18% of them summit, and there's about 400 deaths, okay? I would tell you what we found is there's a lot more of the local porters that are dying on that mountain because they don't have the proper equipment, training, food, and so on like that, okay? So kind of some of the stuff I work that I end up doing. Here's where this all started, okay? I'm trained as a combat medic. Not by the Canadian military or the American military, okay? From 1989 to 1995, beginning of 1995, I spent most of my life over in South Korea. I read, write, and speak Korean, but I will tell you my writing is horrendous, my spelling is terrible, but I've been able to keep the language. 2 years over there, I was associated as a missionary. I was a young 19-year-old kid at the time. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, but I enjoyed the work. And I made good friends while I was over there with this gentleman. I guess I don't know how well you can see in this black and white photo over here. The man in uniform is the man who I considered my father in South Korea. He got to know me. We just met in the park. He saw how my language abilities progressed in the next couple of years. And he asked me one day, well, what are you doing when you go home? And I said, well, I don't know. I'll probably go to college and become a school teacher like my father. And he goes, well, why don't you come work for me? And having the rank and the age that he had on me, I could never ask him personal questions. Like I knew where he lived. I assumed he lived in a really nice neighborhood. But he turned out to be the foreign minister of defense, okay, for the country. Now, there's three of them under President Note, who was the last military government in South Korea. And anyways, he hired me and brought me in, and he got me involved in a program called the Katusa program. If any of you have been in the service and served over in South Korea, you're familiar with the Katusa program. Basically, an English language training program for a lot of the upper servicemen or specialized servicemen in South Korea, okay? I ended up working with them, started off just with English, but boy, they threw me into a whole different program that took over my next 3 years and received some excellent training with them that I have used in my career ever since. The young man standing next to me was my best friend who I did the training with. He liked to jump out of airplanes in his spare time, which I didn't necessarily like doing. But he was shot and killed one day at the DMZ up in Kongwon-do. We were based out of Uijeongbu. If you've seen the MASH shows on television, this is where we were based out of the area. But he was working. He was regular full-time military at this time, and at that time, I don't think we realized we were losing an American boy a day on average along the DMZ in South Korea. So sometimes they were just accidents, and other times they were still shooting at each other. So, okay, from here, after South Korea, I made my way to the University of Hawaii at Hilo. Okay, very good education out there. Could have graduated in 4 years. Stuck around on the island for 7 years. Why? Because it was nice, okay? But I was also, though, at the time, based on my background and the medic abilities that I was hired at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. I have to thank my Dean of Student Services out there for hooking me up with that job. And I was hired, in particular, they call us the eruption crew. So I was an eruption duty ranger, but I was with the law enforcement division, okay? Within the National Park Service, there's different structures, from the interpretive rangers that wear those nice smoky bear caps and give you tours. I was with the law enforcement division, and we have the fire division and maintenance divisions and so on. But my job was essentially to pull all the injured, dead, dying, sick, and ill tourists off the lava flows, okay? Plenty of body recoveries as well, which was something I was able to handle very well. Can you see the photo on your left here very well? Okay, I should have made you all move forward like I would my students at the university. There's no sitting in the back rows there, but anyhow, if you can see that clear enough for me, I'm standing and I'm smiling. I've got my big glasses on. I have to protect my eyes from what's out there in the element. This is down by the lava flows, where about 2,000 tourists a day would visit. I'm giving you this hand signal. What is this called? Don't tell me hang loose. If you say hang loose to locals in Hawaii, they're just gonna go tourists. Okay, it's actually called the shotgun. I'm smiling, but can you see what's behind me? Wow. That's lava, okay? That's real active lava flow. I was never worried about lava. I never saw it move more than 150 meters an hour per se. But this day was different, okay? This was a different lava flow. We were called out, usually before I started my shift, especially when I became operations chief, we would fly over the flow field in a helicopter, just so we knew where the lava was. We got an idea of where the tourists were, how many were off, routes that we had told them to take. And then we'd go down to our business on the ground, and we got a search and rescue call for 3 stranded tourists, and we were hiking out towards them. Okay, it was about a 2-mile hike as the crow flies. But what was different this day is usually you can hear a lava flow from a distance. It just sounds like the crackling of a fireplace. Okay, the trade winds are always blowing here. You think it's windy in Bowling Green? It really isn't, you guys. Okay, the trade winds are always blowing. And you can sometimes often smell it, okay? But this particular day, we knew there was a flow field and we were close to it, but we couldn't hear it, we couldn't see it, we couldn't smell it until we were right on top of it, okay? Now, so this is why it's right behind me, and I'm smiling, but I'm actually telling my partner to hurry up and take the photo because we needed to get out of the area. Unfortunately, we knew by the speed that this was moving and where the people were that we needed to get to, that we were going to have this flow field come in behind us, okay? You don't want to have that happen, because then you have to radio to park headquarters and say, send a helicopter down because we're caught between 2 flow fields, and everybody will harass you for months because of that. Nonetheless, that's what we ended up having to do. But I will tell you, you guys, I was in my element. If I could have done this job for my entire life, I would have done it, but I do not breathe very well out of my nose because I've worked on too many volcanoes around the world now, and the fumes just have damaged me long term. From this point here, when I left the islands and left for Texas A&M, I kept coming back to the islands. Actually, for my master's, I went down to the South Pacific into Samoa. If you've heard of the Samoan Islands, the National Park of American Samoa. It is a U.S. territory, unincorporated, down in the southern, down in the South Pacific. That is there. They're a good project for their park. But then I actually really got into botanical medicines when I was down there. learning a lot of the Polynesian plants and what they were using them for, what type of medicines and whatnot. But for my PhD, I definitely went back to the volcano, okay? I was the operations chief out there, so my boss let me come back and still have control over my crew. I hired who I wanted, I hired who I trusted, and ended up doing my dissertation title, I haven't looked at this title for a long time, called the Epidemiology and Etiology, which just basically means the contributing factors or the causal factors of visitor injuries in Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. Now, the dissertation just focused on injuries, but there was a whole lot of illnesses down there as well. We just didn't cover that in that type of dissertation because I did want to finish it sometime. But I will tell you, doing this type of dissertation put me on the map for government, okay? When I was actually deciding what I was going to do for my dissertation, I knew I needed to do something that was going to make me stand out. And essentially what I did in this research was not just look at injuries. I was looking at the travel and tourism industry, the injuries. I was looking at park and protected area management issues. I was looking at disaster and emergency response issues. The men that were on my committee were all from different departments. One was from the disaster emergency response center at Texas A&M and whatnot. So I had a good group of people surrounding me that definitely mentored me. And that type of a topic really caught attention. And a year and a half before I was finished my dissertation, I was hired by the National Park Service in Washington, D.C. to run all their, well, they call me the public risk management specialist and tort claims officer. So I did handle a lot of the injury related tort claims, handled it in terms of working with my Department of Interior solicitors, saying, oh, are we going to fight this claim or are we just going to pay out on the claim and so on like that. But my main job was in the public risk management sector, which was basically injury and disease prevention. Even with our search and rescue teams, I taught them to be a lot more preventative instead of reactive, because we were spending close to $12–13 million a year just on search and rescue costs, okay? And that all wasn't at the Grand Canyon and Yosemite National Park. At KDM, Maine was one of our biggest problems actually for search and rescue costs. So, but this is where I started to begin looking throughout just the National Park Service originally at what people die from. Okay, those are in the tourism and outdoor sector. Okay, now we do it globally. Every morning that I wake up, first thing I do is I have a special Gmail account, and I've had a long-term relationship with Google News, who have been very good to me, where I have almost 11 years of data of what they send me every morning of how tourists and other travelers per se have died around the world. Sometimes I get just media reports, other times I get full autopsy reports. Sometimes I just get incident reports of what happened. If you were to ask me, I would say, you know, if you would say, Travis, where do Australians die the most in the world? You want to know where they die the most? Stop. Outside of Australia, okay? Thailand. You want to know how they die? They fall off balconies at their hotels. Why? Contributing factor? They drink a little bit, okay? That's where the Australian data shows up. What about Americans?
Outside of America.
Outside of America. Where do we die the most? I don't know why people travel to Mexico. We're dying in droves down there. Same thing with Canadians. I have to, I get after my Canadian friends traveling down to Mexico. They go to, you know, they go to areas that, well, if you have to go stay at a resort that needs to be guarded, issues happen. Okay, now I'm going to tell you straight up around the world. Okay, we're talking about pandemics. We're talking about infectious diseases. I asked you what you were scared of, okay? You mentioned some things. What do people die from when they're traveling abroad?
Waterborne germs.
Not even close. Not even close. What's that? Yeah, spot on. 50% would be heart attack, stroke category. Okay, after that, it's usually trauma. Okay, trauma comes in at about 27%. Infectious diseases, 4%. Okay, so I often tell people, what are you worried about? The infectious diseases? Yeah, we hear the horror stories, but they're not what we're really concerned about. Okay, and I have State Department data to back this up. This is something we know in our field very well. That doesn't mean downplay infectious diseases by any means, but that's where they show up. Usually motor vehicle crashes, okay? Never drive in Egypt, please don't. Don't even go on the tour buses, okay? People die that way. As long motor vehicle crashes, then it's water-related deaths, drowning issues. We're seeing suicides and murders come up at number 3 and number 4, okay? Inside our national parks, what do you think people die from in our national parks? What's that? Falls? Yeah, falls do show up, okay, but it's not the first one. I was waiting for somebody to tell me that, because we hear all the bear stories and the bison stories. No. Motor vehicle crashes, you guys, okay? If you're in here talking about being worried about the next pandemic, I'm telling you, start worrying about your driving, or start worrying about what's going on. I was gonna hit this new roundabout that we have here in town. Every Friday's the worst day. I drive a different way to the school on that day, because, yeah, but it's motor vehicle crashes, followed by drowning. Okay, and suicides, even in our national parks, okay? I talked to my friends at the Suicide Research Center over at Oxford, and looking at where they have a lot of people who jump off the cliffs of Dover, the White Cliffs of Dover. And so we compare suicide methods, where in the US, we have a lot more gunshots and drug overdoses. Over there, they have more hanging and knife-related suicide. So, but nonetheless, this is where I grew my job into. I loved this job. If I could afford to live in DC, I probably would have stayed there more than the 3 years I was in this position. But as it was, I ultimately wanted to come back to academia anyhow. This is where I am now. I'm working with the International Society of Travel Medicine. I'm the founding chair of the Expedition and Wilderness Medicine Specialty Group, okay? I work with people, if you can see here, Andrea from Italy, he's the chair for us this year. Andrea was my first contact when this whole COVID situation started, okay? He called us, we were actually, several of us were talking to each other every other night. He was exhausted, and he said, Travis, don't believe what you're hearing in the media about the PCA test, because they're not conclusive. They hinted something wrong. He says, but you can obviously tell from a clinical presentation what was happening. Okay, and it was scary. Jim Bond, what's that?
What is?
Oh, sorry, that's a diagnostic test. A lot of people take what we call COVID tests now. They've got much better. Okay, but the early ones really weren't terribly indicative, or couldn't really indicate. They could just tell you were sick, but there was ways they were being tested in labs that almost everybody was going to be considered infectious at that point. So we also had Howard Backer from California, Jenny Visser, New Zealand. Max Winkler is a very good friend of mine down in South Africa. And he was always musing. He says, I'm always hearing the media who talk about misinformation, talk about the South Africa strain or something like that. He says, I'm right in the middle of this, and I have no idea what they're talking about, okay? Things were happening, they just weren't as the media was necessarily portraying, which should have surprised us. So, but we run this group, we're got a membership of about 300 people from all over the world, from Nepal to Indonesia and everywhere. That gives us a pretty good handle on what's happening globally. We have started a group, actually we've taken an idea and ran with it, where we've started what we call our Geo-Sentinel data. And this is where, if you just be patient with me, I'll talk about this more as I get further down into my presentation, but we're basically trying to monitor what's going on around the world. We started with 13 sites, we're now up to 21 sites, trying to get an early warning system started, so we won't be caught off guard. Some of my research I've done, okay, just so you know what I do, I have to look and see what I put up here. Swimming with death. Naegleria infections. I have 3 publications on this topic. Have you heard of Naegleria? I sure hope you have, because it's very present in Ohio. Okay, nobody's heard of it. Have you heard of the brain-eating amoeba? Get water up your nose. This is what I'm talking about, okay? I wrote this review paper, put it in the Journal of Travel Medicine and Infectious Disease, and it went kaboom, okay? I'm called about it all the time. I've got a call from Vanderbilt University the other day asking me questions. And with my German colleagues, we helped repurpose a medicine in Germany that was being used for breast cancer that showed very good signs for killing off this amoeba per se. And we now are able to keep it in the United States so we can get it out to people fast, but really need to get it to people within 24 hours. If you are swimming in lakes and if you are swimming in fresh water in the United States, please be careful. Okay, this amoeba is found in all of our soil profiles. You see where I find it in Africa. It's everywhere, Australia as well. But it's a matter of getting in water, getting up our nasal cavity. You can drink it, get it in your ear, and you're gonna be just fine. Drink it all you want. I really don't care, actually, but just keep your nose plugged if you're jumping in some of these lakes. If it's hot weather, just stay out of the water. Honestly, I don't mean to scare people, but it's a real thing. Often misdiagnosed as meningitis because it has similar symptoms, but it will kill you a lot faster, okay? That's one of the projects I'm doing. Search and rescue, we won't go into. My approach in epidemiology or in poriatrics is very much an epidemiological approach. I put out a paper from Lake Powell. It's out in Utah. It's one of our national recreation areas in the National Park Service. Benefit for me in my work that I do in terms of research is I know the federal system. I know how the feds keep their data. I know where to find it and I know how to get it. And I was basically able to go back and talk about how people died on this lake for the last 46 years. Okay, starting in the 50s is where we started off. Maybe kind of popular, okay, but I looked at contamination sources. This one's one of my favorite ones. Do you know what hippos are? You say the word hippopotamus to me, and that's a four-letter word. Okay, I've been chased by hippos, so I don't like them. But they are also one of the biggest contaminants that kill people in Africa. Not, okay, we know the animals kill about 3,000 people on the continent a year just from, they puncture you with their teeth, okay? They don't stomp on you, they puncture you. But in terms of E. coli and other pollutants, what hippos just stay in the water and they poo all day, okay? That water gets taken into a lot of lodges, a lot of housing, a lot of people are depending on these rivers, and the mass amount of poop that they put out, it's a lot, okay? And we've been able to trace that. My German colleagues, they have resources that I would only dream of having. They've been able to tie it back to some specific hippopods just based on samples from the livers they were taken, but that's research I don't comprehend what they're necessarily doing. There's one back here. Oh, maybe I didn't have it here. There was one called Viewing Lava Safely. That was my first publication in 2004. And it was called The Epidemiology of Visitor Injury and Illness in Hiking the Lava Flows, something like this. But it was basically called Viewing Lava Safely, which in my opinion, there's really no safe way to view lava. But that was what I smile about. But it made me a hit, got me involved working with the Travel Channel and a relationship that hasn't stopped. Now, let's tie into COVID, let's tie into SARS, let's tie into more epidemic stuff, okay? I'm working now with two airlines, Lufthansa out of Germany and Ethiopian Airlines, okay? I'm in Ethiopia a lot. I have two twin daughters that are Ethiopian. I'll show you a photo of them here towards the end. In Africa, the two countries that I've worked in the most, well, the three would be Ethiopia, Uganda, and down into South America, or to South Africa as well. I don't want to go back to South Africa because it's not a safe place to be anymore. I would not recommend anybody to travel there. Honestly, it's a country that's just got problems with crime. But what would we be doing with Ethiopian Airlines? Ethiopian loves America, by the way. They love Boeing planes. They have far more Boeing planes than they do Airbus planes, okay? How many of you have flown? You've seen seating charts like this?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Then you can tell me what's the dirtiest part of an airplane? Where are you most likely to pick up? No, let's say some bacterial strain. That's mostly where.
Because everybody's coming by and touching everything and.
You are the first person to get that right.
Oh.
Yeah, you really are. Everybody starts telling me, oh, about the tray in front of you. Yeah, that's dirty too, okay?
Yeah.
People take wipes and sometimes clean things down and I'm like, honestly, when you're taking those wipes, make sure they have as much bleach in them as possible. Okay, so that means wear gloves if you're gonna be doing that kind of stuff, but it's very much worth doing. So what we do, and I enjoy this, is we get on flights from London down to Addis Ababa, and we hang out a few days, and then we come back from Addis Ababa back to London. Literally, this is so time consuming, but we do it. We are literally going there and swabbing all of the seats, all of the bathrooms, pretty much everywhere in an airplane. Now, we swab those, okay, those are just little swabs that we go across on, we put them in the bag, we have to label them, so when we send it to the lab, if they're gonna grow cultures, we have to know exactly where they came from, okay? And what we were finding is, and it's gonna depend on the different models of the plane. We can talk about a 787 and 737, and I'll direct you to where we find most of the bacterial strains that are problematic. But on the Dreamliner, it's basically what you said. It's on the back, when you walk down, I'm gonna step over here a little bit so I don't trip. When you're walking down an airplane, can you walk just straight? No, you're always touching the headrest, okay? So, but you think of all the headrests in the airplane, where will be the dirtiest ones? Dirtiest in terms of having the most bacteria? The ones closest to the bathrooms? Yeah. No, it's not the entrance, it's actually the bathrooms, okay? You have to think of the point source of the contamination coming out of the bathrooms, okay? Now, flights from London down to Addis Ababa, generally pretty clean, okay? I mean, clean in comparison to what we have on the return flights, okay? Because a lot of people, a lot of people from East Africa somewhere, it might be the first flight, they don't know how to use the toilet, okay, so they squat on the toilet seat. You understand what I'm, some do it the rest of the world, okay, it's actually the best way, so there can be a higher chance of infection, or not infection, but more bacteria is present. So you come out of there, do people wash their hands? Did your kids ever wash their hands? My kids do now, okay, I do now, okay, for sure. Okay, you come out of the bathroom, you take that first step. I'm left-handed, so my tendency is always to go to the first step to the left, then I'll balance myself probably 2 more rows down, and it goes like that. I can literally map airplanes, depending on which flight it is, or what make of an airplane it is. We haven't worked on any Airbus yet, we've been doing just Boeing, but we can almost diagram where the problem areas are gonna be. But what do you do with that kind of a knowledge? Okay, we tell the people where they need to clean, we tell them what they need to use to clean, and what we are telling the aviation industry now, and Lufthansa is actually listening to us, is they need to change their materials. We're not worried about the HVAC systems in airplanes for spreading a viral strain or something. They're usually pretty dependable. But in terms of the bacterial issues, we're telling them they need to use a lot more copper and iron because things will be less adhesive to those surfaces and they will fall down to the ground a lot more. Okay, so are you a chemist? You're shaking your head like that, but you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, so that tends to help out in the tests that we've done. Yes.
I was just going to ask, were you stating that in reference to like the seat, the material of the seats are made of?
If we use bleach on the seats too much, it ruins the color of the seats, so they don't like that. We're talking mostly the materials of the airplane. So where you see the hard plastics,
Yeah.
and especially in the bathrooms. Okay, more copper in the bathrooms would be great. Okay, yeah, and don't ever not wear shoes and socks in an airplane like I see people doing. Okay. What about hotel rooms? Have I scared you yet today?
You had.
You guys, I love this stuff. People call me Dr. Death is my nickname. Okay, my best friends call me T, but I'm really Dr. Death. Okay, but I also say that I'm also Dr. Saving Your Lives, because we have saved a lot of lives through our work. So, hotel rooms.
Oh my God, that is.
Yeah. Do you want to hear? I can skip over this part if you want me to.
No.
You don't want me to. See, they're scared, but they're not that scared. Okay, this is the MGM Grand. I can tell you about all 72 hotels on the strip. I can tell you details about them on the strip. If you are going to Las Vegas, don't stay at the MGM Grand. Okay? My contract is over with them, so I can say this now, okay? But they will ultimately, they won't answer you, but they know what we're talking. They call us, they called Thomas, my German colleague, and I, and we actually flew the Australians in one time. They had a room that they noticed was getting everybody sick. Everybody who stayed in that room was getting sick, okay? I had similar problems on houseboats with the National Park Service, norovirus related, somebody came off a cruise ship, norovirus is still in all the kitchens at Yellowstone and the Grand Canyon, but anyways, they called us and we were thinking it was norovirus, it wasn't, and this is where we found our first SARS strain, okay? This was in 2009, okay, where we were first finding them, and we're like, okay, this makes sense, okay, and it does, and this is why. You have to think about who stays in these hotels, and it wasn't just one room, it was almost an entire half of one room, okay? This is where hotels like the Georges and Paris get concerned, is they have to shut down one room, but they know it can spread to other rooms just as easy, okay? And that's a lot of money when you have a $4,000 a night room that's closed down, so Basically, you have to look at how do these problematic, whether it's a viral strain, bacterial strain, how do they come to the hotels?
People.
People, but people from where?
I mean, well,
Oh, that's such a nice way to say that. The Orient, okay, okay. My brother lives in Taiwan. I have Filipinos in my family. They would like that. I always say Chinese Taipei when I want to bother them, but, or tease them. But yeah, you have to look. Who do we have staying? High rollers from China coming into the MGM Grand. Also, we have the Middle Eastern strains, okay? The MERS, have you heard about MERS? Okay, just refers that they are coming from the Middle Eastern part of the world. I will tell you, I almost always know when we have a case of MERS that is coming from Kuwaitis. Okay, that's not the dog on the Kuwaitis, but they seem to have a problem with MERS that they haven't been able to get. It's, I'll let an actress fall. So, but yeah, so, but in hotels in general, I first got called into, the Marriott's, because Richard Marriott's a good friend of mine, family friend of mine out in DC. That's actually who I rented from when I lived out there, but, he was interested about, employee injuries, occupational health and safety. Who gets injured the most in hotels or employees?
the cleanest day.
You just on a roll today. I've never had somebody like this in the audience. Always is lower back injuries. Okay,
Yeah.
lower because they're bending, whatever, or anywhere else there's water, or if there's a restaurant, I can totally design restaurants for you, so. You gotta have a door that goes in and a door that comes out, and please don't make your staff wear 6-inch heels. I know it's Vegas, but just let them wear flats when they're serving, okay?
Yeah.
But, anyhow, but other than that, where's the dirtiest place in a hotel room? Where are you most likely to get sick from in a hotel room? You're most likely to slip around the water, wherever there's water, okay? So where I'm looking at cruise ships or hotels, I'm always checking that they have some type of anti-slip material on the floors or in the tubs themselves. But that's not even an issue. So, what's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's scared of bed bugs. You know how we deal with bed bugs? $500 a day, we rent the dogs from Disney, and then we charge them $1,500 a day. So bed bugs aren't an issue though. But so was the mattress you were thinking about bed bugs?
I just think I'm clean, right? But
I'm thinking of, I believe.
Oh, are you talking about the sex stuff?
Yeah.
It's in hotels.
My stuff at your mouth, you know,
Yeah.
saliva.
Okay, okay.
Pillow.
Pillows, okay. Hey, what about the bathrooms? I'm trying to divert you away from what you're thinking, okay, you know what it is, it's the duvets. They don't wash them, they wash your sheets, they wash your pillow covers, but the top duvets do not get washed as much as they should, yeah, this here, other times it's like, oh, should I be touching this remote, like the TV remote, high touch areas, them too, but it's mostly, the creepy stuff comes out of the bed, out of the top bedding.
And you know, that's so funny you say that. One of my friends' mom, we were in undergrad, she worked at a hotel.
Mhm.
And she would always tell us, well, when y'all travel, make sure you take off that top layer.
I
of
always do, yeah.
And we didn't understand why, but
Mhm.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Like, that's.
Yeah, if I'm traveling to the US, I like to stay at Hampton Inns, but I always do that. You know, it's just good advice, but then wash your hands after you've touched it. Okay, now. I want to come, because you're wondering where I'm going to get back to this pandemic, epidemic type stuff. Okay, I'm going to take you back out to Hawaii Volcanoes National Park for a minute, because I want to explain to you the methods that I will use, or some very easy stuff, the approach and the methods that I use in a lot of my research, because it does relate to what we're going to talk about next. So just bear with me for a second. This is hydrochloric acid plume. This is where the lava hits the water. It's not steam plume, okay? It's acid rain, very dense acid rain. So hydrochloric acid, lava crosses the highway down there, that asphalt, very toxic. These are days I'll put on a respirator. We actually pull out of the area. You have people like this coming up the lava flows. You keep your distance. It can be safe, but one of my favorite incident reports was a lady with 3rd-degree burns, and she just said, I just wanted to touch it. Then we have tourists come out there and they roast it with they roast hot dogs or marshmallows on it. Okay, you better start thinking of the fumes that are being released from what you are perceiving as fire. You want to put that toxic stuff in you. It's nasty, okay? People try to watch the ocean entry and wonder why the trade winds that are driving the waves, push you into the coastline where there's active lava, not a fun situation. That's what we call the Coast Guard, okay? We're not trained to do anything in the water. But, basically, I take this approach when I'm working on a resort, whether I'm working in a national park. I want to know what's happening, and I will tell you, I know from doing this for so many years, that let's say if I'm in a national park somewhere, or, I could be already Mount Kilimanjaro for that matter, up on Denali. I know I'm going to have an area that has a high number of incidents, okay? I don't use the word accidents, I use the term incidents. High number of incidents, but chances are most of them are gonna be minor, maybe some moderate scrapes and abrasions type situations. But I'm also gonna have another area inside, whether it's that park that has fewer injuries, but they're gonna be much more severe, okay? So in terms of thinking about a national park, I know outside of every visitor center is going to be an injury zone, okay? And it's always in the parking lots, okay? Maybe some children have been cooped up in a car for a long time, they get out, they run. And what do people always trip on in parking lots? Okay, I'm getting the speed bumps, but you're right on that too, okay? They're just running the trip or they fall. People over 55 years of age, I'm only 54, so I'm gonna pick on the 55 plus category. Okay, people tripping on the speed bumps, people tripping on the curbs, or people having a hard time walking. You've been in a car probably for hours. You want to get to that bathroom, okay? But the simple, the fall, but you have to start thinking of the trajectory of the fall as well. You're tripping, you're falling, you put your forearm out, so you get a forearm shatter or something. Well, hit your head or you hit your shoulder. Not incidents that are going to kill you, but I consider those injuries a lot more minor and severe, okay? Versus an area, when I started working on all this data at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, I already knew the answer kind of before I started. I knew my most severe incidents were gonna happen down on what we call the eruption site at the time where the lava flows were, just because I worked down there. Now, I always worked the 2 to 10 p.m. shift because I knew I wouldn't get home till 2 a.m. because we would get hazard pay for some search and rescue or some third-degree burn or something like that, okay? But what I do, when I go back and I look through multiple years of history and I get into what I call the incident reports or the incident records, I get in there and the first thing I look at is the human factors, okay? I want to identify the person, okay? Now, I don't say, if I was working in the hospital there, I would say, oh, this is the person, male, female, or whatever to classify as, and they have COVID, okay? No, I look a lot more beyond that. I want to know that person. You're looking at age factors. You're looking at pre-existing conditions. Okay, that is a big player in almost every situation I work in is pre-existing health conditions. Okay, I want to look at their age, gender, nationality will actually tell me sometimes a lot about a person. Not always, but it can give you a lot of hints. Okay, so I want to look at the social demographic factors, the human factors. I want to look at what activity they were involved in, okay? I have this chart here, but I don't expect you to understand it. I look at the agent or the vector or the host. I look at these factors of the human factors, the environmental factors, and the activity factors. Were they hiking? Okay, not were they just hiking, but were they experienced hikers? Most Americans are not experienced hikers, okay? It's kind of sad sometimes in our data when we're playing with some of the non-parametric analysis that we do, we have to consider somebody with more than 5 hikes experience. You're really not experienced at 5 hikes, okay? But we'll look at these, the activity factors, what's their experience with it, are there equipment factors? Did they have the right clothing? Did they have the right shoes? Did they have this? Did they have flashlight? Did they have the right amount of water, okay? The environmental factors, are they in a built environment or are they out in the natural environment? What kind of a substrate are they walking on or hiking on? Do you get the idea of what I'm talking about? I investigate more than just saying somebody got sick, they're a statistic, okay? No, I go and I look at all of the contributing factors that I possibly can, okay? So, at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, I knew, well, actually did learn from my data. I knew that most of our severe incidents were happening down at the lava flow, and I knew most of our minor incidents were happening up in the parking lot by the visitor center. There are other places and other things that show up, and every park is different, okay? I can take you out to some of the battlefields that people visit, some of the national battlefields, and it's always the parking lots, okay? Or in the bathrooms, even for that matter. But I knew we were having a problem with the most severe incidents happening at the eruption site. We knew people were having a lot of dehydration issues and heat exhaustion. If you know the difference between somebody who's just dehydrated, having a heat stroke versus just exhaustion, their eyeballs get a lot more tight. They will swing at you too, okay? Because their mind isn't necessarily there. But people weren't carrying enough water with them when they were going out on some of these little treks. They were tourists. They were wearing flip-flops. They were prepared to go to the beach, not for a hike out to the lava flows. Okay, I could go on and on and on and list all these things, but we basically knew what was going on and we knew that we needed to stop it. Now, much of our operations in America are reactive and not preventive, okay? I'm very preventive. And so I follow what we call here the continuum of travel medicine that my colleagues in Australia and I came up with this, but we start talking about how can we prevent these issues? Well, how can we prevent some of these incidents from happening in the very first place? That not only saves people pain, but it saves us time and saves us money and them money from any hospital bills, okay? And we basically believe, and we know this to be true, that if you're gonna get a safety message out to somebody before they ever travel or before they do a certain activity, it's why they're at home planning the trip. Okay, now I'm talking to tourism perspectives here, outdoor recreation, but I can employ this to other parts of life as well to get these safety messages across. When you get on a cruise ship, what do you do that first day? Gotta have that safety address, you gotta listen to it, or else they're not gonna let you stay on the boat, okay? I like to get that safety information out to people before they even get on the boat, before they even leave their homes, okay? Because we know that it's more effective that way. People are gonna change their behavior or prepare more if they have a message before they even leave their home, okay? What we did at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park is we wanted to put a skull and crossbone on our website. Of course, the superintendent didn't want that because you don't want to scare the tourists away. Okay, this is a challenge. Nobody wants to be branded an unsafe tourist destination, but we came up with that viewing lava safely line again. And we just put that on the website. We said viewing lava safely. And we said, hey, we want you to have a good time when you come here. To be as safe as possible, please bring good hiking shoes or good walking shoes. Please bring water. If you're coming at nighttime, bring flashlights with batteries. You know, bring this, bring that, bring a jacket because it gets cold at nighttime and so on and so on. And we didn't just put that, you know, we said it in a very proactive way, not a damn you, you're gonna do this and damn you, you're gonna do that, or you're a dumb tourist. No, we're saying, hey, we want you to have the maximum experience that you can. So this might help you. We put that on the website. Then we also set up a telephone hotline for all the hotels, gave it all the hotels and said, hey, if you have guests coming to the concierge desk and asking about coming to the lava flows, have them dial this phone number down at the park. We updated it twice a day, what the conditions were like. And oh, by the way, wear good shoes, bring extra water, you know, and so on and so on. We give them that safety message again. When they would get to the entrance of the park, they would get a quick, brief safety message, but then at the visitor center, after you're watching all the videos and the highlights, they would say, hey, if you're going down to the eruption site, please stop at the confectionery here and get water flashlights, or I just use the water flashlights as an example. And you know what happened because of that? You always have to monitor whatever you implement, so you know if you've been effective or not. We cut down the number of severe incidents by 80%. Okay,
Wow.
yeah. We save lives. Our deaths down there, I'm not allowed to talk about the deaths down there because technically, once we put them in an ambulance, they're a county statistic and not a federal statistics, but the number of fatalities went down significantly, okay? Now, the dynamics of the lava flows today are very different than they were at this part of time, but that's an effective way, an effective approach to take. And this is an approach I basically take in all of my work. So let's get back to the pandemic stuff. Why am I telling you this? Okay. COVID was real. Okay, I had COVID early on. Only really beat me up for 3 days. I was fortunate to be out in Salt Lake where my partner out there and the two Ethiopian girls, they're dermatologists, but they also work in big pharma. And I was at a church in Park City, a non-denominational church that never passed a sacrament or a Eucharist or anything like that, but they had crackers that everybody was taking. And this is just before COVID was really getting started. This is between Christmas and New Year's. And as soon as I had my cracker, I sat down, I felt it. I felt something was wrong, and it came on fast. I was feeling, I don't know how to describe it, sinus type infection. Is just, I knew something was wrong. And when I got down to the house, they noticed I was starting to fever up and get quite sick. It happened fast. It happened fast. And the twins like, oh, Travis, we'll take care of you. And they start pulling out what they call them minerals. Okay. They start giving me some of, yeah, anyways, vitamin C shots and whatnot, that I give them credit for. Everything they gave me that night made it a shorter COVID experience than what people were having later on, okay? And I give them that credit for it, but it was a real situation. But I was horrified, sitting in my office here at the university. Actually, I was on sabbatical during the first part of COVID, so didn't get much of a sabbatical, but yeah, but nonetheless, but I was horrified. I was in Alberta, you know, at my parents' house, watching what our provincial government was doing. And basically, anybody that went to a hospital and was sick was being counted as a COVID statistic. Okay, that was happening all over the place. And I'm sitting here, hey, you guys need to be collecting a lot more data. Just because somebody shows up and they have a, you know, maybe an influenza type of symptoms or something, not everything is COVID. I'm like, you need to start asking, do they have pre-existing health conditions? Okay, if you're diabetic, or if we have some other health conditions, we're going to be a lot more vulnerable, and you can identify who's going to be more vulnerable. Okay, I'm trying not to minimize experience for what people went through, but we weren't collecting the right kind of data. You see, Johns Hopkins University tried to get in on this. Okay, Johns Hopkins was very popular in the first few months reporting COVID numbers, but then they stopped. You ever wonder why they stopped? They have one heck of a public health system or public health school out there. And they knew that the right data was not being collected. Okay, yeah, we were getting fatality data, but we weren't sure of all the other contributing factors. And in some cases, what it really was. So Johns Hopkins quit reporting that data. We knew the CDC, and the CDC has come out and said this now, that yeah, we knew the data wasn't perfect. And we're like, yeah, you think? Because any epidemiologist would be sitting there thinking, what's going on and why are we just focusing on this? I was more, because I was home in Alberta at the time, that I was like, I can't believe they're so foolish, and they're not looking at the real, of what they really should be looking at. Mind you, in emergency situations, and you know, hospitals are overrun, and they were overrun, and the staff was exhausted. Who has time to sit there and collect all that data necessarily? Okay, but at the same time, a bigger effort could have been made. Okay, I'm going to tell you straight up, we have to be careful when we're talking to epidemiologists. Because there are a lot of epidemiologists, most epidemiologists, the people that have a master's in public health or something, are what I call armchair epidemiologists. They have no field experience, okay? There's a guy like me that's been out in the bush, been out in the field. I understand how things work, whether it's infectious disease or whether it's trauma related. I've lived it, I've breathed it, I've been involved in it. But most people with their masters in public health or community health, they're dependent on models, statistical modeling. Okay, and I'm going to tell you, my master's advice is all statistical modeling. I don't trust models, because you just change one or two figures and the whole model is gone kaput. And when I hear people saying, well, we're using this model, we're thinking this is going to happen based on this model, to me personally, that tells me that person does not have very much field experience. Okay, so I throw some caution to the wind there. Okay, we need to collect a lot more data. So now, this article that you read, you all read it? So we can do a pop quiz? Not everybody read it? Okay.
I can't afford the book.
I'll give you mine afterwards. I'm not a fan of the article. Okay. I don't like to be critical of people. The author, Carolyn Reynolds, I've heard her speak before. She's a good speaker. She's a good person. Okay. But I'll point out to you, the person writing this article has no work in medicine. No, you know, she has no education in medicine. She's basically got a bachelor's and master's in, I believe it was international affairs. Okay, she's not the expert on COVID. She's not the expert on pandemics. Okay, now, are you familiar with K Street? If I talk about K Street in Washington DC, it's where all the money flows in Washington DC. When people say clean out the swamp or whatever lines they're talking about, they're usually talking about K Street special interest groups. Okay, to me, her writing this article and her pro World Health Organization modus and her pro-vaccine modus, I'm pro-vaccine too, so don't take that statement wrong, but she's what I would call a K Street, a K Street worker in this type of sense. So the people with the money, the special interest, she's pushing us to a point where, oh, we should sign on with the United Nations World Health Organization. When has the United Nations ever worked well? Okay, it's a big bureaucracy. I have friends that work for the WHO in Zurich. They tell me the challenges and what's going on. Getting into an agreement with the World Health Organization is not what we want as Americans. Okay, we really don't. We don't want to give up that control. I get the idea that we have to be good to other people in the world. Everybody needs to share. We should be taking care of each other, but we need to take care of each other first. And handing control of this over to an international organization doesn't work in anything else. So I don't know. We would try to do it here. And I will tell you straight up too, right now, with the director of the World Health Organization, we just call him Ted. He's an Ethiopian. He's compromised. When he was in the Korean government, he's Eritrean, he's Tigrayan. If you've heard of the Tigrayans recently, they were the old communist hangover groups in the 70s and 80s in Ethiopia. He's compromised with China, with other groups. It's hard to be a director of an agency like that, but we saw through COVID that things weren't that, we're calling it COVID because we should be calling it a SARS strain, but COVID was just so we didn't offend the Chinese and hurt their national image more than was hurt in 2003. But he's just not somebody that I would necessarily trust us working through. But yeah, that's all I'll say about that. I know when he was in the Ethiopian government, he was in charge of the national healthcare system in Ethiopia, which I never heard of. Okay, it doesn't work. They say they made a lot of progress on malarial issues and TB issues. I will tell you, there's no functioning hospitals outside of the capital city, and the one that in the capital city this function is a Korean. They call it Korean hospital because the Korean government funds it. So we hear all of these ideas. What's next? What is the next pandemic or disease X? We have now any hemorrhagic fever bothers me, Ebola. I'm worried about malarials and dengue in the United States. Okay, we know we have a dengue fever. You're aware of what dengue fever is doing right now? It's not just in Florida, like they're saying. Okay, it's all over the southern states as well. What about malaria? Any of you had malaria? West Nile virus? Oh, this is a pretty lucky room in here, okay? West Nile virus to me is a malarial strain, okay? Please understand that malaria is very endemic to North America. The Mississippi, the Missouri rivers, all along there, used to be full of malaria. And I'm talking in the 1870s, the early 1900s, okay? The Red River of the North through the Dakotas going up into Manitoba. Manitoba is where the provincial bird is a mosquito. Okay, yeah, a lot more malaria. In our modern times, we've learned to drain the waters, okay, and beat back the mosquitoes. But with climate issues changing, I didn't say global warming, I'm saying climate issues changes, which they are, okay? Whether it's naturally changing or we've impacted it, there's no doubt we've impacted it in my mind, okay? We tend not to be as good to the environment as we should be. We're having a lot of issues come back. The permafrost in northern Canada is melted, okay? It's not the permafrost I used to walk on, it's now squishy, and you better have some what we call water shoes that are just basically snowshoes that help to walk on water, and it's not going to sink more than a few feet in. But the mosquitoes are back, they're in mass, and the type of disease they're going to bring with them. I expect to see a lot more malarial issues in the next 20 years show up here in North America. Okay, a lot more than there already is. So let me just look at my notes here for what I wanted to talk about here. This is what we're doing with the geosentinel data. Okay, we are basically collecting start off with 13 hospitals, 13 major hospitals, around the world. The best ones are in Europe and North America that will tell us, you know, they report their data, okay? The challenge is not, we have what we call ICD codes, that we classify a certain injury or illness as. Nobody in the world uses the same, you know, ICD codes. Nobody in the United States, different states use different systems. So we've kind of got this corrected that we can filter the data in and get some early alerts to what might be coming our way, okay? And it's been working for Europe actually quite well, some of the data we've been getting. We've now spread it out to 21 places. We want to get it up to 50 around the world. That's my effort at getting an early warning, early detection system, okay? It's a lot of work, okay, but the CDC is supporting us on this, thank heavens. And everybody wants to do something good in their life, so people are trying to help as much as they can. And I'm hoping in the next 5-10 years, we have a very robust early warning detection system that something might be coming towards a certain country in a certain place at a certain time. But other than that, you guys, let me just show you this next. Okay, now this is pictures of the kids and Uncle Sam. Okay, why Uncle Sam? Because I'm going to tell you, you want to know how to prepare for the next pandemic and epidemic or whatever's coming at you, other than stopping driving and don't go swimming at beaches. I would tell you, it starts with you. It starts with you. Your best line of defense is yourself. We know if we turn things to government, there's going to be bureaucracy. Unfortunately, there's going to be politics involved. Okay, but the best line of defense starts with you. Okay, what I recommend is start working on your immune system, your personal immune system. Our immune systems are incredible. Okay, I recommend, I don't have it up here, but I should tell you this, vitamin C. Do not underestimate the power of vitamin C. Vitamin C and zinc will really boost your immunity, okay? Long-term, no, but short-term, they will help you out. So daily doses of that. I also recommend vitamin D3, about 2,000 IUs a day of vitamin 3. Don't take more than 2,000 IUs a day unless you want leg cramps or other issues like that, okay? At one time, I was taking 5,000. I wondered why my legs were cramping up on me. Then it's like, yeah, you're overdosing yourself, okay? Even little packs of emergency, you see those little orange or raspberry pack? Those things are potent, okay? Now, those are not gonna be a long-term solution for you, but if you're feeling run down, you're starting to feel sick, dope yourself up with some emergency, 1 a day, 2 a day if you really have to start with. But that will definitely boost your immunity. Washing your hands, good hygiene. Don't live around your animals. Okay, we have a lot of transmission, the zoonosis type of diseases that are transmitted between humans and animals. People don't realize, I'm not talking about your dogs or your cats in your house. I'm talking about, you know, if you're out on a farm, okay, or if you're out in those areas, have a healthy distance between you and your animals and keep, you know, if you've got horses, if you got cattle, keep their stalls clean, okay? If you don't, this is where things are gonna start breeding and this is where problems are gonna come out of. Chickens scare me, okay? I never liked chickens either, so, but, my grandma did, my mom did, but I did, so, but these are the types of things where you can just start on your own and be as preventive as you can. I wash my hands like you wouldn't believe. When I'm giving exams at university, you know what I'm listening for? Not the students going for it, even though that's kind of fun, but, no. I'm listening for the sniffs going on, because then I know how much Germex I need to use when I'm grading their exams, okay? I actually do think this way. I need to keep my hands clean when I'm grading exams. I don't touch my face, okay? We all touch our faces way too much. We all do it, we can admit it, but I'm very cautious, when I'm grading things that I don't touch my face and I make sure my hands are clean. So, when it comes down to issues of vaccines, you know, for that, I'm gonna tell you it's a personal choice. I'm very pro-vaccine in terms of, I like my yellow fever vaccine, okay? I have chronic malaria. I really do, just because it's just, I've been around it too much, okay? And there's some nights in the middle of winter, I'll be sitting around watching TV at 11 PM and I break out in sweats and I know what's going on, okay? But if there was something I could take for that, I definitely would. But when it comes to using vaccines, I want to throw a word of caution to you, okay? We were told a lot of things about these vaccines and these boosters, and it usually takes a good 7 years to bring a new medication, a new vaccine out into the public for even human trials, okay? And then chances are, half of them are gonna be off the market in 2 or 3 years later, or 5 years later, because there's been side effects or something that aren't necessarily, weren't necessarily caught in earlier trials. We had these vaccines, you know, from Pfizer and these other groups that were essentially developed so fast, but we were using the new mRNA methods, okay, which actually show a lot of promise for the future, to be honest with you. And I'm not going to say that the vaccines don't work or that they did work, because they seem to have different results for different people based on our own personal factors, okay, pre-existing health conditions or whatnot. But I've been disappointed when we now hear Pfizer saying things like, oh, well, we never intended for these to prevent people catching COVID. We just wanted it to reduce the severity. But we were kind of given the impression that we were trying to stop it from spreading to other people, okay? So I felt lied to on that. But what, you know, I was fine with what was going on around me during the COVID situation, because I was doing my vitamin C, zinc, and my D3. I felt comfortable with that. I felt strong about that. I didn't necessarily want to get vaccinated because I was nervous with them being brand new drugs and developed so fast. And you know, even President Trump, you know, for Republicans tend to forget that he was pushing them as much as anybody else was. I just wasn't comfortable with it. And when I did get my first shot, the university was encouraging us to get it done, but my real reason for getting vaccinated is I had to get to Canada. My dad was in a care facility in a dementia unit, and I knew I had to get across the border. I'm a US citizen, okay? I naturalized in 1995, and I'm very proud of it, and I only carry a US passport, but I'm also a born Canadian. Okay, just because my mom went home 2 weeks before I was born to have me, then I moved back down to the States another 2 weeks later, okay? So I could get into Canada based on that citizenship that they tell me I'm always going to have, even though I tried to get rid of it. But I had to be vaccinated and follow the rules, which were absolutely ridiculous. If you follow what's going on in the Canadian political system now, it's kind of, it's just saddening to see what happened. But my experience, and I don't know what your experience was for those of you that were vaccinated, I got very sick. Okay, I got my first shot over at Meyer. I came home, I was on the toilet for 7 hours that night. I thought I was gonna die. Okay, it wasn't, you know, it started off as a loose stool and diarrhea. But after the first 2 hours, what was coming out of me was the fluids that come out of the organs. Okay, when you're at a point where you're dehydrated, and then your liver, your kidneys, they start draining of that. And I really thought I was a dead man that night. Okay, I still got my booster, but I was sitting there putting all the electrolytes in, putting as much fluid, lemon water, everything I was putting in me just to get through that night. After that, I was fine. I didn't have any problems with it, okay? And I had a second booster without any issue, but these are decisions that you should be making for yourself if you want to do it, okay? Most people get the flu shots every year, okay? I don't, just because they make me really sick, and I've been better, you know, I know what strains they're guessing each year, and you know, so I don't do it, but my mother does, okay? And it's her choice to do it, and she says that it has helped her over the years that she's felt protected, okay? So I'm not saying don't vaccine, don't this, that, that's not my place to say, okay? But when I say that, dealing with the next issues that might come forward, whether it's wild polio, okay, we're having wild polio outbreaks all over Africa still. My mom has always talked about what the polio was like for her when she was a little girl, and that they weren't allowed to go play with some of their friends down the street because they had polio, okay? So there's very similar situations. So, but you need to just take care of yourself first. The misinformation you manage, it's always going to be out there, whether it's right or wrong. Someone's always going to try to make it look like misinformation, and it's really hard. So I would encourage you guys to take care of yourselves first. Okay, have a food supply at home, even, you know, if you have to isolate yourself or feel like you need to isolate yourself. We really don't know the full side effects of how we handled or mishandled this COVID situation. The mental health effects that have come out of it. I see some things that my students at the university that I'm concerned about this generation, and we just see some behavioral issues and other, side effects. We destroyed our economies essentially. Was that for the right or wrong? It depends who you talk to, okay? So you have to make those decisions. I'm not gonna stand up here and tell you what to do, but I will encourage you to start taking care of yourself first, because that's going to be your best line of defense. It really is. And have your house prepped for emergency situations, okay? I grew up in the Mormon church. What do the Mormons preach? Other than knocking on your doors and annoying you, okay? In the church, they preach a food supply. They want you to have a 1-year food supply. They're very good at it. And then when you have other free time, do your genealogy. So that's why I don't want to go to heaven. I don't want to sit there and do genealogy the rest of my life. But anyways, my mom did it all the time. But anyhow, this photo here, I just have to end saying this to you. This is Raquel and Margie here on the far left, if you can see them. That's a Temple Square. This is them. They're graduating this year. They've turned into beautiful little girls. They were, when I first met them in Ethiopia, they were just these little girls that had barely survived a birth. Barely survived. They were 4.5 pounds, as was my biological son here, Andrew, who's now about 6'1". Deborah's met him, big rugby player, hoping he's valedictorian this year, good kid. He was 4.5 pounds too, a real preemie. Anyways, start with yourselves, protect yourselves. If you ever have questions and ever want a personal opinion of your personal health situation or something like that, find me. I'm not hard to find. Travis and Tourism and BGSU. That's how people find me all the time. And anyways, questions, throw them at me. Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for getting all the answers, right? You gave my thunder in one. But, sir.
You were talking about a lot of misinformation and the media and COVID. My question back to you is, a lot of this is detailed information, but a newscast has got to take a complex subject, try to get it down into something that is understandable and readable.
Yeah.
What would be a good source or sources for us to read that gets information to us in a level that we can understand?
Yeah, and that's always a challenge. I think the news could still do a lot better than they have done. And I'm not talking Fox. Fox was terrible. CNN was terrible. I mean, we couldn't depend on those sources. A lot of people, I tell you, turn to the web. If you go to the website, you can find a lot of information that is more detailed, but even that can be wrong. For me personally, I have some really good colleagues around the world. Max and these guys from Italy to South Africa to people in Australia. I actually depend on them. That's how I can answer it. I depended on them to give me a lot of early information. So I can't tell you who to go to. I mean, the CDC has started to correct a lot of their information. They had some change over there that needed to happen. But I also understand, because I work for the Department of Interior and the National Park Service, that agencies have their missions, okay? If we were talking about the Naegleria, that amoeba that I was talking about, CDC doesn't like Travis when we start talking about that stuff, because they always say that it is rare. And myself and the parents of the children that have died in America are saying, no, it's not rare, okay? It's just not common, and it's often misdiagnosed. Yeah, but the CDC's intention there is to not create mass panic, okay? My intention is I want to create mass education, and we need to start telling people the truth. So when I'm in the courtrooms, when I get called in for expert testimony, of the 5 cases on the amoeba issues, one involved a girl from Ohio here who caught the amoeba at the National Whitewater Center in North Carolina. I'm 5-0 against the CDC in those type of testimonies. But it's just the nature of their mission. CDC has some excellent scientists and some excellent people down there. But yeah, I guess I can't really answer your question, because I use my primary source will be my colleagues. And I'm blessed to have that.
How about the New England Journal of Medicine?
Well, I don't turn to it, I turn to it for some, it's not a journal I read a lot of, because I read the Journal of Travel Medicine issues. New England Journal of Medicine is a lot better than something like the Atlantic Monthly or something, who not enjoyed reading in the past, but, if you want some facts, you have to understand the research is always changing. When people say trust the science, well, that's good, but understand the science changes. Okay, sometimes you have a study population of maybe 1,000 people, well, I don't know how, an inferential model looking, making decisions for 10 million people can be done off 1,000 people. So the science can change. Yeah.
We have a question on Zoom. So it says, of all the material that I've read about COVID-19, I thought the most real-life description of what was going on is the book Moonshot inside Pfizer's 9-month race to make the impossible possible by Dr. Albert Bourla. What do you think of this book? Or have you heard of it?
I haven't read the book, but anything with the title Moonshine, I'm gonna read. Okay, yeah, I don't know, I'm not familiar with it, so I don't, my work doesn't focus on COVID-19, okay, I stay away from that kind, because I don't want to get into the politics of it, okay? I know people that were threatened, for publishing some of their research on it, but I also don't know how much of that is necessarily true either, so yeah, it's nothing I'm not gonna say I'm an authority on COVID-19. It's actually SARS to me.
And then there is, nice.
Second question.
There is another question. It says, what about syphilis?
I don't have it. What's the specific question?
It just says, what about syphilis?
You don't want it. Yeah, I don't know what the question is, so I can't talk about that. Well, it go to the STD category, but it's a lot worse. What I will tell you, we're seeing with syphilis is it's not necessarily, there's cases in Spain and Portugal right now where it's not transmitted sexually. They've got cases where it's just transferred through touch, which has some people, yeah, I know, it's got some people nervous. 2 cases of that, was that my journal last year, so, yeah. Things change, viruses, bacteria change and adapt, okay? We can't solve malaria without using DDT. But any malarial prophylactic that we have, it just adjusts and beats us. So, yeah. So I say, science change, things change. Yes, sir.
They say virus doesn't kill you, mutates and tries again.
I don't have a problem with that. So, yeah. Sorry to the person asking the simplest question. I don't know what specifically you're asking me, so,
That's what I said on there.
okay. Anything else? Ask, please. And if I don't know, I tell you I don't know, okay, yeah.
I know your specialty isn't COVID, but have you discussed with colleagues or whatever? I have heard that each time you get COVID, because there are people who keep getting it, it's kind of a cumulative effect.
It's the long COVID issues and so on like that.
Have you heard about that at all?
Yeah, they're not.
Okay.
They don't buy into it necessarily, but how can you say that to someone that feels the symptoms, right? So what we saw happen with the first SARS outbreak in 2003, I still remember the news reports of the hospitals in Toronto putting all the plastic tenting up inside and all of that. And then just suddenly it went away. Suddenly we stopped talking about it, and it was pretty much just adapted and put into, not adapt is not the word. It was adopted into our upper respiratory caseloads, okay? We're starting to see that with this COVID situation as well. People are, they're kind of treating it, some are calling it a flu, okay? It's not flu, okay? It's meaner than a flu. But they're treating it just like another upper respiratory caseload. Right or wrong, I don't know, because there's still people dying. There's still people dying, so, it's not over. It's not over, it's just how are we gonna adapt to it? Was that a fair answer?
Yes.
Yeah, it's, yes.
How do you feel about much stricter regulations in hotels and motels, especially for air filtration
Okay, I'm glad you asked me that. I talked about this at the medical school of Central Florida last year. Okay, I was actually interviewing for a job down there. I'm glad it didn't work out, but, I really, I thought it would be an awesome gig, but then I was like, oh, this would have been a terrible situation, but, I feel very strongly about it. Okay, hotels, what I proposed down there was setting up, a center for hospitality medicine. We have travel medicine, we have wilderness medicine. I want to start up a center for hospitality medicine where we can train the hotels on what they need to do, especially with their HVAC system. Okay, I go into hotels right now. The first thing I notice when I go into a hotel, the first thing I'm looking for is the air quality in the room. Is it stale? Okay, I can literally, because I drive the I-80 west and east every summer, sometimes twice a year. I can tell you the hotels I stay at that I don't stay at again, it's where they do not have windows that open. You have terrible air quality, it's stale. And then I'm always looking at the air filter system, or is it actually working to begin with? So that's why I stay in Motel 6, right? But, no, anyways, yeah, it's an issue. At the actual hotel I stayed at in Florida during this interview had a terrible filtration system where it was recycling the air from inside the hotel. And nothing was coming in from the outside and nothing was really being filtered, okay? We have the ability with the HVAC systems to, we're not gonna be all of it, but we can really improve by a good 90% easily in hotels. So I always leave comments to the managers, if it's a Hilton or Marriott, I know them well, and I know the corporate offices and people in the offices, and I talk to them quite a bit actually, and tell them what can be done. But at the outside of the corporate office, is it being implemented, is the question, okay? Going in and cleaning things, watching the proper bedding, those are easy things to do, but the air filtration is gonna be the biggest challenge. Yeah, and they can be doing a lot better job. We have to demand that, the only way to really drive change is to really start demanding that of the hospitality industry. Secretary.
And kind of to piggyback off of his question, I've noticed that like here in BG, it's like a laundromat, they, put in like a filtration system to filter through the clean water and the washing machines and all of that stuff. Do you think that that's going to become a common practice across or?
I'm not familiar with what you're talking about. I haven't seen it. Is it in the cafeterias?
Well, no, if you go to the BG laundromat across the street from the Kroger, they have like, after COVID had came in, they put in like this filtration thing for the water to like sterilize it and clean it and all of that.
So they could charge you another 50 cents
Well,
probably. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, anything that does that for water or air, I support it. Yeah, you should see my drinking water at my house. You wanna see how many charcoal filters and things I put that through? Yeah, I do. I'm really not, I'm not OCD about it, but, kind of am.
Are you a Virgo?
Actually, I'm a pure Scorpio, and everything you read about Scorpios, it scares me, it's true, so.
I don't know if there's anything to this, but when my wife and I travel and take our kids and stuff, we always stay in pet-friendly hotels because they appear to be cleaner than other hotels.
Yeah, anywhere you have a pet, they're not gonna, that just means
I wasn't sure if there were different regulations that make them clean hotels.
no, this is marketing, okay, hotels, one of my colleagues won't like me saying this, it's, Kim Soup won't like me saying this, but, they're always, hotels are preaching going green, we're gonna wash your towels every 3 days or whatever. It's just marketing, they're not, what they're doing is not gonna really have an impact, okay? Now, when I call my Utah house, when I get out there, 5 cats and a dog in one house, okay? Oh, it's a pet friendly home, but yeah, I'm always doing double vacuuming in my room, so, and running my own air filter, so, yeah. I can't say that they're any cleaner than others, but, if you're allergic to animals, you go into a room like that, even 5 years later, you can smell
The lady commented back on Zoom and said that she has read several articles about syphilis shot up. So I don't know if that's what the question is going about, is with a rise in it, maybe?
Oh, well, yeah, syphilis is making a comeback, but that's really related to people's sexual practices. Yeah, it really is. You know, in countries like South Africa, one place specifically in KwaZulu-Natal is very tribal still, very rural in those areas where we run a type of Doctors Without Borders program for childbirth, rather than flying a helicopter or a plane out to the bush and bringing the mother back to the hospital where they usually die on the way back. We fly doctors or midwives or nurses out there. But there's almost every situation, whether it's a birth or whatnot, it involves AIDS, HIV/AIDS, and even though the meds are cheap over there, it's still very, very, very common. And so there are men specifically there that still believe to this day that if you have HIV/AIDS or HIV, the way to get rid of it is to have sex with a virgin. So they go after the 12-year-olds and the 10-year-olds, and hence it keeps getting spread that way. But yeah, the uptick in syphilis, I've heard of, but I haven't heard anything why. I haven't heard, other than what I'm assuming why. Yeah. But I'm gonna go home and find out now, so, yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You guys wanna have me back?
Thank you, Dr. Travis, for your topic today. As always, the Zoom will be put online. We are closed on Monday, so it may be like the middle of the week by the time this is put on YouTube, which is the Wood County Committee on Aging. Thank you.
You really wanna have me back to talk about cruise ships? How do people die on cruise ships? I can tell you. Are you